Hi, everybody. Wow. Hi, everyone. Welcome back after lunch. I hope you use this time to discuss and meet new people. Now we move to the second thematic speech, and we covered the issue from the morning, from the big perspective, and we slowly zooming in, and now we go to the practice. So I invite Joan Maria from Descartes Underwriting, and he will tell us how the underwriting companies are looking on the climate risks, insurance gap, and what data they use. So,
Great.
Floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you for the National Bank for the invitation or for all the distinguished attendees today. I'm really happy to talk about this amazing topic today. For sure, today is a challenge talk after lunch. So I know perfectly about this because I came from the country that invented the siesta time. So I could try to do my best to make it as most dynamic possible, this presentation. As we talk during this day, the losses for climate risk are on rise. And we see worldwide that the natural disasters and the insurance losses that we are suffering worldwide are increasing year by year. We see that we are not only concerned in terms of the frequency of these events, more about the intensity of these events. Central Europe, for sure, is not an exception, and we see the impact of the drought, of the flood, and the hail impact in the region with big losses across the region. As we mentioned during this day, the Boris storm generated big losses, and so the big protection gap that we have in the region, for this kind of losses. And at the same time, when we see the traditional market, the insurance traditional market, we see certain gaps that affect to the clients. We see that the average between claims reporting and received the compensation for the client is more than 1.5 years, the average in case of CatNat events. With the inflation that we have today, this amount of time is absolutely massive, a massive impact for the clients. At the same time, many of the clients don't find on traditional market the right coverage for the full financial exposure that they have. And when we talk about financial exposure, it's not only the business interruption for these clients. We are talking about the contingent business interruption. We are talking about the impact of Tier 1, Tier 2, or Tier 3 providers in your supply chain in case of a climate event that affects to your production. We are right now in a market condition of soft market. We are seeing better prices in terms of property compared with the previous year, but we are seeing that the exclusions and the sub-limits and the lack of capacity for certain areas is still the same than in the hard market. And finally, it's true that the wordings are usually really general, and it's really difficult for many clients find a tailor-made wordings for their real needs and for the assets that they would like to cover. As we mentioned during this day, for decades, our industry has been built with a very simple idea that the risk can be understood looking at the past. That assumption, for sure, is no longer valid. Not because the past is irrelevant and the data from the past is irrelevant data, but because the system generating the risk fundamentally changed. Climate is no longer stationary. It's becoming more volatile, non linear, and increasingly difficult to modeling using traditional approaches. And this is creating a structural gap, not just in protection, that yes, but in understanding. We have here the sea surface temperatures average. And we can see where is the average and where is the last 3 years. That is absolutely far away. If we take into account the average data to modeling this risk, we are underestimate what is the risk that we have in front of us. We tend to describe the climate change as an environmental challenge. But I think that for this audience today, I think that it's more accurate to describe it as a modeling and capital allocation challenge. Because what is real, what is a real changing, is not just for the frequency of the event, it's for distribution of the losses that we have. And we have to apply a different approach to analyze, to modeling, and to offer solutions for the clients when we are talking of this kind of risk. And this is the approach that from Deka Underwriting we apply. First of all, our underwriters are not the typical underwriter for an insurance company, are scientifics. More than 60% of our employees are scientific from the most prestigious universities because we need, for us, it's very important that the people in charge of every single peril have the expert on this peril. And for this reason, we promote the PhD in our employees, and all the leaders of the single perils are PhD in hail, earthquake, or the perils that they are currently modeling. Because for us, if we really understand the risk, if we can model in the climate risk and introduce these variables in our modeling, we can offer a solution stable in time for the clients. I have clients with a CatNat exposure in Caribbean for more than 4 years with renewals as expiring. No? This is absolutely incredible compared with the volatility of the property market right now. And this is thanks to this support and with this data that we have. Applying this methodology that we will see in the next slides, we have right now solutions for more than 20 perils, helping more than 600 corporates and public entities worldwide with more than 30 billion in capacity deployed from 2019, and with automatic capacity per policy for 80 million until 200 million for earthquake, cyclone, and other kind of risk. No? How parametrics works and how we can use or apply this methodology for the risk that we have in Central Europe. Parametrics is a really simple work. We define what is the kind of peril that we would like to cover. Compared with traditional markets, we are covering only one peril or multiple perils, but we have to define peril by peril the risk that we would like to cover under this policy. Then we have to check what is the data available about this peril. Because sometimes we cannot offer covers for certain perils because we don't have data, no? And this is the case of a specific for hail that we will discuss probably during the round table, because I'm really concerned about that. But with the data that could came from public data, official INC, satellite devices installed in the location of the client, we design with this client a payout structure that we trigger the policy as a level of severity that the client considers that they will suffer losses. And we usually define on a scale, depending on the severity of this event, and we pay a percentage of the limit until the 100% in the case of a total loss for the client. When we have defined what is the structure, what is the period, and what is the data source that we will use, we activate the policy and we monitoring these variables, and in case that this policy trigger, we automatically play to the client. The process is really easy, it's really simple, and we promote this swift payment for the client, because in case of a claim, liquidity is king, and in case of a crisis, the client needs this liquidity as soon as possible. No? And this policy gives the clients the possibility to receive this indemnity in a matter of days or in a matter of weeks, depending of the different data sources that we are using. But I would like to show you some examples, no? Some specific examples that you can see different alternatives to use the parametric for a different kind of risk. This is the river flood gauge insurance. No? Many of the floods are related with rivers, and with areas close to the river. So thanks to this solution, we can offer a coverage for one single risk of a portfolio, or a complete portfolio of risk around this location. We take into account what is the water river gauge, and in case that trigger the policy at different measures, that this is designed absolutely case by case for every single client, depend of the kind of risk that they would like to transfer to the insurance market. We activate the policy and automatically pay for this client. At the same time, we can provide solutions based on rainfalls to cover different areas, different portfolios, or different assets around one area using data from different kind of devices that we can install, or from data that came from public entities, to take into account what is the level of rainfalls and activate the cover at this specific maximum daily rainfall in this area. No, this is another solution that we can offer for rainfalls. To design all of these products, we take into account the past losses of the client to try to design a structure that match with these losses on the past, and to generate and create the comfort for the client that in case of an event like this, they will receive the amount of money that they would like to receive, no, for this kind of events. When we are talking about only one location that is very affected by the flood risk, we have the option to install a sensor directly in the location of the client, or in the area that is more affected by this kind of perils. In this case, we install a sensor that monitoring all time and space, and in case that detect that the water of the river, or the water of the area go a certain level, we activate the cover for pay this client. Now, this is working pretty well in areas with past losses and with problems with the capacity on traditional market due to the events on the past. When we talk about flood, sometimes the next event that occurs is the landslides. No? In this case, is a real example with a real client that is a real railway national company in Asia that we are working with this client, where we are covering all the railways in the country for landslide and for flood. No? With this client, we design a structure that take into account a value per kilometer of the railways, with specific values for bridge, tunnels, and stations, or different key points that for the client have an additional value, no? That the value per kilometer of the railway. This solution works with satellite technology. We have a private satellite with a resolution of 1 meter. And in case of a claim, we obtain a photograph with the satellite about the area affected, and with a third party that analyzes the imaginary, we did confirm what is the level of severity of the damages in this area, and we pay a percentage of the limit based on this scale that we design with the client. The only problem is when the areas are forestry areas, no? And it's not easy to see with the satellite this specific location. To solve this issue, we have the option that in these cases where the client is not full agree with the image that we have, to activate a local loss adjuster to go directly to this specific location and to activate and to confirm where are the losses, no, in these cases. But it's a solution that is working pretty well for railways and for road operators too, no? That are right now in this situation of the market. It's true that this kind of covers on traditional market, landslides, are really penalized for the market. The deductibles are really big, and sometimes it's not easy to find the right limits that the client needs for this kind of covers. So that's a solution that is connected with flood, but that is working pretty well too for these clients. I talk about contingent business interruption. That is another main concern for many clients right now. due to the exposure that they have at certain areas of the world with providers that usually are located in areas with high CatNat risk. No? We are talking about Asia or other regions with exposure to typhoon or to tornado or semiconductors in Taiwan. We have many problems on traditional market to cover this business interruption exposure through the traditional market, and with Parametric we can work to cover this full financial exposure of the client, covering directly the locations of your providers in different countries of the world against the peril that is affected. No? We have motor industry clients in Europe where we are covering the semiconductors provider in Taiwan for earthquake in the location of the client, because in case of a claim, they don't have any other provider right now to, for these semiconductors. No? So that's some cases, but we have these cases in Europe too. You remember in 2008, we have really drug problems in the Rhine in Germany for the transport by the river, with big losses for the industry, because they can receive the raw materials and the goods through the river, generating big losses for the industry. This exposure is something that we can cover for rivers with the rivet gauge cover, take into account what is the level of the rivet that is not acceptable for the vessels, and cover through this solution. And with river is not only for transport, because some of our industries take water from the rivers. You can take water, but in case of the river down to the ecological level, you have to stop to take this water. And you have a problem in your production, you have to stop the production. So this is a solution that we are working with many clients to cover this exposure that right now is not an option on traditional market. No? We have many gaps right now that under this kind of solutions we can fill right now in different areas of the world. And we mentioned drug, no? That is another big issue for now and probably for the future, unfortunately, for our region of Central Europe. And for drug, we have a really interesting solution using European technology with ERA5 satellite data that provide us daily data of soil moisture until 3 meters without error worldwide, with more than 10 years of data to design this solution. So we can design a solution based on the soil moisture in the location of the client, in all your portfolio for agro business in a region, in only one parcel. We are using this technology to cover providers, for example, with coffee companies in Europe, where we are covering the drag in their Colombian coffee providers, or with pharma industry, we are covering the excipients in certain areas of the world against this kind of risk. We designed the structure taking into account your losses from the past, because thanks to the satellite, we come back to the past and see what is the soil moisture conditions at this year to design something that makes sense for your exposure and with your past event. There's a solution that is working pretty well, give the clients the possibility to cover an exposure that is not easy find a solution on traditional market. These kind of solutions are really tailor-made for every single client, for every single insurance, reinsurance company, or governments. No? We are partners of United Nations covering countries in Africa against some of these kind of perils. And you can use these solutions to use as an additional capacity in the Nexus layer. We can work in a middle layer. We are working in a second event in reinsurance contract. We are covering the deductible buy down, because sometimes the exposure is really big and the deductibles are really high, and we can use the Parametric to fill this gap with the deductible that the client have. And we are at the same time working with ELW's structure, with CatNat bonds, with governments to cover the exposure that they have for certain CatNat perils. I think that we have to have in mind that climate is not linear. and the response can be not linear either. The future that we have in front of us is something that we have to think about this and to see that our response have to be different than in the past. We have to use more the technology that we have in front of us to design solutions that fill the gap that we have right now in front of us with the client. We have to take into account that the risks that we have are not usually isolated risks, that are interdependent risks. We have more interdependent risks than ever right now, and especially in our region. The last one, I think that parametric is a good solution to try to fill the gap that we have in front of us for many of the clients. Take into account that liquidity right now is probably sometimes the last resource for the clients to survive in case of a crisis. And when we talk about insurance market and we have to spend more than 18 months to receive the amounts in case of a claim, sometimes it's too late. And this solution could be the option to survive to this kind of crisis sometimes for our clients. So really, really happy to be here. More than happy to you have any answer. I know that are a lot of things to share in a short time, but I hope you have a vision about parametric solution on how we can help you to handle many of these risks that we have right now in the Central Europe region. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Jean-Maria, for your presentation. I'm happy that you are here because you are staying with us for the next panel. So please have a seat. And I would like to hand over to Linda Zelenkos, the CEO and founder of International Sustainability Finance Center, which covers this topic in our region, and they do a great job. So I'm happy that Linda will interview all the fellow panelists here. So please follow Linda.
Thank you. Thank you. So I would like to also welcome Lukáš and Matúš to the panel, and we will try to keep you awake. Great. Okay, so I think how we're going to run this session is that please do stay active and ask questions. We have our own questions we would like to start with, just while you're still thinking what kind of difficult things you would like to ask the panelists. So I will keep monitoring the Slido part, and we will definitely also try to involve you in the questions. Since we're not that many, maybe we can even pass the microphone around if people want to ask in person. So if you want to ask it rather in person, just introduce yourself, raise your hand, and we will give you the floor. So thank you, Juan-Maria, for the very comprehensive and visually pleasing presentation. Very interesting. So today with us, we have two people who have worked on this topic in practice, and we thought we would actually explore what kind of innovation is happening in this space and what kind of trends we should be watching out for, right? We all use insurance, we work in this field, so it would be interesting to unpack that as well. So I will start with you, Matúš. So what are the kind of main game-changing developments that you have seen, and any kind of examples from your own work, please?
Thank you, Linda. Thank you all for having us today. So we heard many problems which are associated with insurance gap protection, and I will probably add to it. So it's not only affordability, it's not only liquidity, but as we heard, is also observability problem. So you miss the data that are missing in your models, actually. I think that then, if we miss the data, the pricing, underwriting, public intervention is weak. And I think the biggest game changer is actually hybrid intelligence. I would say satellite data, because I'm satellite expert. We are very much focused into satellite analysis. But I say it's hybrid intelligence, is together satellite data, AI, parametric insurance, and historical data we use or you use with your risk models. But as we heard, there are problems with historical data because with current climate change, the overall portfolio is changing. And with satellite data, with current revisit periods, with current capabilities, with current resolutions, you can improve and superpower your models because you can actually measure pre-event, during event, and post-event, many different variables. So we are focusing stability intelligence. So we focus on strategic infrastructure, monitoring millimetric displacement city-wise over national highways, railways. And as a Slovak-based company, it's fascinating that we are now focused in monitoring earthquakes in Turkey. We did study on the London, which is built on clays and have a swelling and shrinking periods. We try to analyze those. And we also monitor subsidence in Mexico City. It's strange we don't have this talk in our home country about how the technology can be used for you, because it has never been the time, and I actually really appreciate this. And also white paper published by EIOPA, it was just 3 weeks ago that I read how Earth observation can improve your models, how it can support risk estimation, how it can lead probably also to the prediction with AI, which was, if you are a scientist and you say you can predict something, back in the days it was a little bit out of limb because you might be thought as a magician or something like that. But we are closing this gap as well. So I think satellite data might be very important. We monitor landslides in Slovakia. So Ms. Chilikova, you might invite the right guests because we do have cooperation, especially my colleagues, monitoring specialists have cooperation with State Geological Institute of Dionys Tur. We monitor highways, railways, but we need this missing part of the equation, which is conversation we are having actually today. And this is the game changer, because we never have been attached to your problems. We'd like to hear your problems, what we can solve for you, how this language look like, what financial indicators you would suppose to have. So this is my point of view, yeah.
So actually where we fail is actually the human collaboration part, which I think is something quite common when we talk about sustainability and maybe efficiency and competitiveness. Let me turn to you, Lukáš, now. So we live in an age of data. So with the rise of data centers, data sets, etc. So we all think that, the more data we have, the better things will be. So actually my question to you would be, so the solutions and the ability to use this data, does this actually mean that we are getting better quality data? Are we able to have better solutions? And is more data actually good for strategy and decision making? So what is your view on essentially the abundance and data being the new oil?
So right now we have a lot more data than we ever had. Because first, when we look at all the satellites that we have, and this is still the cheapest option, using satellites, we use them. We use a constellation of satellites, is the cheapest option. Airplanes, the small aircraft, electrical one, I forgot the name, are really expensive to cover globe. So first, we now have the data, and we use satellites directly when there's an event. We have something called Rapid Image Assessment in Swiss Re. It's a service currently for US clients, but it's one of the services we have where we directly monitor the events as they happen and provide this information to insurers on the level of properties. So obviously we use lots of computer vision, AI, and within 2 to 4 days after the meet of the event, we already know the damage per property. So which was not possible before, and still on average it takes months. And this is completely changing. Second thing is, all the insurance companies, most of the data they have is not structured, it's text. You get lots of text, you get lots of claims from your clients and so on. And this was not processable before the current revolution with the GenAI, which I think all of you know. But it opens lots of options and lots of possibilities compared to very static products that we provided to clients. Now it's a lot more dynamic. We scan and we ingest the submission with hundreds of pages. Within a couple of minutes, we extract 400 most important informations. And the now AI agents that we put into production a couple of weeks ago are also providing risk assessments, check with our guidelines, check with if it's within our appetite, and it completely changes the journey. And you get a claim, it tries to pair this claim with this textual information to your contract. And afterwards, if there is any missing information and doesn't detect fraud, prepares and even email for the claim examiners. So it's transformative, I think, around underwriting and claims processing. And I think these are the two areas where insurers are speaking with clients. Nobody's checking if you have an insurance contract every day, some insurance application if nothing happened. You speak with your clients only at the time of underwriting and at the time of claims examining. Nobody ever spoke with them at any other time. And these are the areas where we can focus, improve, and use the technology and the data now we have to improve, to get better products, to be faster, especially fast, because if you have a claim, you want to be fast. You don't need to be that precise. You can fix the imprecision later, always. But if you are fast, it counts for two. And this, I think, is changing the industry and also is changing how the clients look at us. In the 70s, we were sending a Swiss Re 2 underwriters or 3 underwriters to for agribusiness to Brazil for a couple of days. We put them in the room like this. All the farmers came during these 2 or 3 days. We underwrote everything, and we flowed these underwriters back into Europe. Obviously, this is not happening anymore. Everybody expects it the next day, so we need to do it in this way. And this is where you can do. Now, there are lots of companies and lots of solutions. I will not try to speak about the Swiss Re solutions. I will try to speak about generic solutions that can help the insurance companies to take the pictures, take the data, or even not take the data, just provide the information. Where is what even happening? Which areas were impacted, and be precise on the level of properties or even on the business interruptions. When you look at, everybody uses credit cards. We have this, I cannot speak about the name of the company, but it's one of the biggest global card processing company. And we were doing research that based on the card processing information we get, and basically they get, which areas are impacted by business interruptions. And we now have this data. And 20 years ago, it was not possible. Now everybody is using cards. So let's be a little bit innovative in the way how we design our products, and I think that will help our clients.
Thank you. I think it's interesting, right? We expect our deliveries very fast. Now we also expect our insurance policies to be decided on and executed quite quickly. So actually speaking of the data that you use, so just a quick follow-up question. Does the sustainability reporting data feature into the assessments at all, or is that something that's still under development?
So for example, when insurance, let's speak about the direct insurance, what we have, that core part about the corporate solutions. So that's around big corporates, huge companies. When they come with their submissions and with hundreds of pages, we first use data ingestion, AI system that we developed to ingest the data and to get as much attribute as possible. And we are speaking about 100 concrete things that we are relevant. But the second thing is, we also trigger AI agent that goes to their webpage, tries to download their income statements that they provide to investors, that they provide to others, including the sustainability reporting they do. Mm-hmm. And we directly take out lots of numbers that they have about what procedures they have, how process managed they are, what were their profits and losses, and where they spend how much. And we try to understand and provide this information in some like nicely structured package that is now tons of data, so also we need to summarize it for the underwriter. So the underwriter has all the information at their hands. They not need to search for this and go through these reports themselves. And afterwards, they can make the decisions faster and even have lots of things pre-formulated so that they don't need to do this manual grunt work, but focus on the things that matter. Risk management. They should not, the underwriter should not spend 90% of time to putting information together. That is lost time and it's not worth paying for it. It should be about risk management. You pay for underwriters because they basically, as insurance companies, they protect your company from bad risk. So that's how we have underwriters. So what they should do is risk management, not putting information together.
Thank you. So knowing that also more companies are writing some of their reports with AI, it's starting to become an AI to AI conversation, increasingly so. So it's quite interesting, right? Who has the best AI? Next, we have actually some audience questions coming in, and I will actually tackle the parametric insurance one first, and then we're going to go through the rest of them. So I think back to you, Juan-Marie, because I can't imagine that there would be a better person to answer this. So how much is the use of parametric insurance spreading also in the Central, Eastern, Southern Europe region? Are you seeing some developments? And also if there's any interesting maybe stories from your own experience and practice from this region?
Yeah, it's really, we have different kind of clients. We have the European clients with exposure worldwide, and this is a big part of the portfolio, especially European clients with exposure in the US and the Caribbean area. Right now, with this boom of the data centers in the US, for example, big part of the contractors behind this project are European contractors, and we are helping these contractors and these insurance companies that are covering these projects to reduce the exposure to a severe convective storm in the US. In order, at the same time, the growth on agribusiness in Europe through parametrics is growing a lot. And we have many cases with clients that are covering their exposure for drought or for spring frost when we talk about fruits or when we talk about almond industry, for example, in Spain, that are going to parametric solutions for the fast payment, for avoid problems with the loss adjusters, and for the possibility to design something that is specific for your crop. No? In the case of the almonds, for example, we are covering only the 2 weeks that the flowers are exposed, and we can create something really specific for your crop or for your client. Or we are working with clients for pharma industry covering a specific pharma plants that are not cover on the traditional market, no? For example, the hemp for pharma industry, no? That is one example. At the same time, the growth in Europe for the parametric is quite related with the flood risk. And we have many clients with this kind of exposure that are going to parametric to find this protection because they don't find the right limit on the traditional market. The other peril that is growing a lot, but with problems that I explain now, is the hail. Hail is one of the risks that the clients are more concerned in Europe. I think that sometimes we are underestimating the risk that we have in Europe for Central Europe, Northern Italy, Northwest Spain and Southern Spain for hail. The risk is really big, and all the analysis is really uniquely related with risk, so that the impact of this risk in the future will be higher. But we have a big problem, is that we don't have data, accurate data, to cover this risk. We have only 3 countries in the world that can provide data, radar data, with accurate data for hail risk. Only US with the NOAA, with multi-radar, multi-sensor system that they have. France, due to the big work of Météo France to design these radars around the country, and right now we have a really, really good data, accurate data for hail in France and certain areas of Australia. The rest of Europe is absolutely a lack of data good, accurate data for radar, for hail, because we need radar technology. This is the only one option that really can provide a good, accurate data for this period. So I think that we have to work more coordinated between the different agencies across Europe, and I think that we need the support of the European Union to find this strategy to create a better radar system across Europe, to offer solutions, to offer data that could help the market design solutions to protect our people for this kind of risk. If we see the increase of the severity of these events in the Central and South Europe is absolutely massive. The number of the size of the hailstone are increasing year by year, but at a level that is not a risk for the industry, it's a risk for the human life if you are behind this level of hailstone. So, as you can imagine, if the big hailstone in Germany in the 80s in Munich occur again at this moment back, the losses could be more than per 2 or per 3 the losses of the Valencia big flood. So that is the level of exposure and the risk that we have, and we have to put more focus, not this to cover this kind of risk.
Thank you very much, Yuan. I didn't have a chance to tell you I'm a radar specialist, actually. So yes, the radar data are improving. Even, for example, the global model for floods. So the ASAR-TM mission in 2020, if I remember correctly, no, early 2000s, allowed global flood mapping by Fathom, which was later acquired by Swiss Re in 2023. And yes, it was the radar that enabled the flood monitoring, the terrain modeling. It is the radar that can monitor biomass, that can monitor millimetric displacements on the ground of objects. The high resolution, even in London, if you look, not only the property-based separation between a raw flood map, but you can go from property to property. Each postcode can have different maintenance, different geology, and you can assess to the roof level, because there are resolution which are going up to 25 centimeters, although they are not maybe cost effective nowadays for hybrid models and to be used with AI, but it will come with the constellations.
Yeah, I think the innovation in this space is absolutely fascinating. How many of you know that there's one of the most advanced satellite building companies in Czech Republic, for example? In Brno, they've started doing drones as well. Surprise, surprise. But they actually are launching private satellites that are equipped with lasers, so that it allows you a different granularity of analysis of ground erosion, et cetera, et cetera. So we're also starting to combine the different technologies. So I think that's a very interesting element right there. And also what we've seen with the radar and other types of systems. I think the question that somebody's asked, and it's been upvoted very helpfully, thank you very much. Nobody wants to ask their questions in person, right? No. Okay, it's anonymous. So it's a great question whether our use and reliance on these AI models in insurance could then actually widen the protection gap, because it would make some regions or some areas, et cetera, or types of properties uninsurable. I recently spoke to well, it's not a startup anymore, it's a scale-up. I believe it's from near Helsinki in Espoo. And what they do is they use a car similar to what Google Maps does, but it's a very advanced scanner that scans buildings in certain banks' portfolios, and then provides a full assessment in terms of the risk, of the materials used, longevity, all sorts of 3D mapping that then allows the bank to assess the collateral in terms of how risky it is or how much value it might lose. So I'm just wondering, and of course, if the building is not quite as good as the assessment that has come through officially, that creates an issue that the collateral might not be as valuable. So what's your personal and professional opinion? Do we face also a risk that essentially this will exacerbate a type of inequality?
I can give a little bit statement that I think the problem is not with AI, but with the precision. Because as long as you create more precise pricing for the clients, that at some point what happens is you understand the risk very well. This is risky, this is not. And then you put some clients out of options to buy the insurance. And unfortunately, this is happening. Because we are more precise, because we want to have more precise marketing, because we are individualizing, and compared to 80s, where everybody paid the same price for, and it was, let's say, for flat payer only number of square meters or something. Now it's completely different, and we are extremely precise, and we will be precise more, and I perceive this risk, I just don't have a solution. But I think it is a long-term problem that we as industry need to find a solution.
Good question. So.
Yeah, no, I fully agree. I think that we are in an industry that's human-driven, and the role of the AI, the role of the technology, I think that is more than give us the possibility to move in from guesswork to granular certainty, to give us the possibility to quote with more deep detail about our risk, but we will need the human vision of this risk or these assets always, and it's a good tool to help us to understand better the risk, to create faster solutions sometimes, because the AI gives us the possibility to analyze a huge number of data, no, in a moment, but. I think that is a change on a vision of the risk modeling that give us the possibility to quote from a zip code to quote for a square meter. No, that is the key advantage, to be more precise, more granular. At the end of the day, when we have this amount of data, the pricing becoming closer to the real, no, and give us this possibility to evaluate better the risk and to put the right price in every single case, no.
Yeah, I'm not an AI expert, but maybe I can use it for the advantage of audience, because I have a question for Lukáš. So, you know, the LLMs, they are fancy pattern recognizers. They use language data to predict the best possible answer for whatever input you will input to them. And even with 300 rainfall data, which is the biggest data set we have currently, in a previous session we had this graph where everything is changing due to climate change, the temperature, the rainfall. So how you deal with calibration of these models? So if they are trained on a 300 rainfall data, is it helpful actually, or how you solve this?
So, for example, specifically for agro, we created a solution called AirMap that is specifically for our Chinese market, and there we observed globally that the climate is changing. We know about that, and what we did is, instead of just looking at what is happening now, we took the data from last 40 years, so not the data from last 5 years, but last 40 years. Over the satellite, and the satellites were changing over the years, there were developments, so there was lots of work to pull this data together. And afterwards, we also created a trend line. So we know what is the trend and how the risk is changing, and we also expect, and we created machine learning. We did it even without using LLMs and GenAI that is now. We did this in 2018. We created a machine learning model that can trend the line, and we understand the trend, how it's developing over years, and that we automatically apply to the next and next and next and next year. So when the client comes and we know the history, we know the events that happened, we know the weather conditions over this area for lots of years, and we also understand that how it's developing in this concrete area. For farmers, it's enough to be on 100 by 100 meters. That's why we had the data. It would be not good enough for, I don't know, properties or something, but for farmers, 100 by 100 meters was good enough. And we have the trends, and you can squeeze this into the model that you avoid being wrong long term. But obviously, it's a risk anytime you develop any AI, machine learning, or basically even deterministic and probabilistic-driven model. You need to understand these things. You need to take care of this kind of risk, what can happen.
Thank you. I think it's an interesting space to explore. Oh, we have a question from the audience. Yes, Roman, could you please? Good.
Thank you.
Petra.
My name is Petra Jukema. I'm the chairperson of IOPA. And I have a question. And first of all, thank you for the opportunity also to ask the question and really interesting panels. So there's more a statement and a question. The statement, I think it's a very fair question to ask, like how far should it go with the granularity of data and data analysis in insurance? That's not a question, I would say, specific to this particular risk, but more in general. And I think, Lucas, I compliment you on saying we're getting more detailed, and we probably get way more detailed, and that is the reality, because I think that's just being honest. And what do you do about that? And maybe this is an area where at some point, for certain risks, society, and this is something for politicians, also not for supervisors, would actually prefer to set a limit to how much data you can use. Yeah, it could be, because I think ultimately if you know everything, it's no longer insurance, because then there's no risk. So I don't think insurers want to get there. But I think they also have a moral compass on what they will do to still mutualize. But competition might push them a bit beyond the moral compass. And I think per line of business, society will have a different appetite in how much mutualization they would want to see. And that brings you to the right to be forgotten discussion, which currently happens in health, but might at some point also happen in regions. Although if you are living in a region where flooding is just a reality, then maybe that's also a very strong sign. So we are working in IOPA on principles on how you assess the fair use of data, and how do you can have a good discussion on how much you will allow, because the risk is that you are only worried about the exclusion and say don't use the data, and that would limit the insurer to actually cover our risks and help us sleep at night. And I missed that last part. So I think it's good we have that discussion. So that was the comment, but watch our website, we're consulting on this. The question I have is to you, Juan Maria. So what I always think, and maybe I'm too negative, so just say I'm wrong, but if you do parametric insurance, what is the risk that the insurance is just set in a way that every time you have a damage is just not within the criteria that were set? Because that is often the worry, that you have a parametric insurance, so it will only pay out if the event. So what if it's not 2.50 meters the water, but it's 2.48 meters? I mean, it's still wet. But the insurance doesn't kick in. So how is the dialogue with customers
with the clients to design this structure? I think that this is the most important part. No, I think that when you have a traditional policy and always traditional policy, the hard work starts when you have a claim. You have to demonstrate that you have suffered these losses and start this conversation. In this case, with the parametric, this work is at the beginning. No? The hard work is at the beginning, designing this structure. We designed the structure with different materials. But past losses, if the client had past losses, it's really easy to back to the past and to work in this back testing with our structures, with the losses of the client, to design something aligned with the exposure that the client have. Sometimes we use CADNAT reports prepared by the brokers, the insurance brokers, or the reinsurance brokers, working on the exposure that the client have on this specific area. So when we are talking about earthquake, we take into account what is the resistance of the building, and the designs and all the technical information that provided by the client to be sure that the policy will activate at the level that the client considered, or based on the level that the engineering considered that is the right point. So it's a hard work. but this is something that we have to do at the beginning. No? It's true that the parametric in general is not thinking about cover small or frequency losses. No? We are here for the big events and for the big perils. In this case of events, it's easier define the trigger to activate the policy and activate the payment for the client. And that's it, no? It's true that it's harder than on traditional policy, that you with a visit to the site or with a report is easier to quote. We have to spend more time to define these characteristics with the client, or we are talking about agro business. We have to discuss with the agriculture, with the cooperative, or with the insurance company that is covering a portfolio. When it's agro insurance, it's easier because you have losses on the past, and we can design the structure, take into account what is the losses that you have. When we are with a cooperative, we have to spend time understanding their business, understanding the kind of crops that they have, to design the perfect structure for this client. It's harder than on traditional, but we are offering the clients certainty in an uncertain world. And in case of a client, to be sure what is the amount that they will receive. It's true that always exists a basis risk, and we have to define and to work with the client to reduce this basis risk in case of an event. But this is the hard work that we have to do, the insurer and the broker or the client, to define what is the right structure for this client.
Thank you. Anyone else who wants to jump in on the answers, or? No, not for this one. Anyone else who would like to ask a question? I think there was somebody else who indicated, no? No. Okay, yes, there's one question over there. We're slowly going to make the way up to the rest of the room.
Thank you. It was very interesting panel, and I would like to ask a question from the actuarial point of view, because during the day there was several times mentioned the actuarial expertise. And the question is maybe to all panelists, if you are excessively using the data about the client, you are going to underwrite, you know, in insurance, there is this requirement to provide to insurer the data willingly. And now you are collecting data without the knowledge of the client. And sometimes in terms of insurance, even if an insured person doesn't provide sufficient information, you can exclude. You know, where is the borderline? What is the liability of a client to provide data? And what is the liability of insurer to get data from elsewhere? Because this is bringing some ethical risk, number one. Number two, there is a second question, and it is about having sufficient sample, because insurance is about a redistribution of the risk around homogeneous risk groups. But if the groups become too narrow, too granular, there is not sufficient shift within the risk of these groups. They become smaller, and it's much harder to price, for example, for expenses, or really to evaluate extreme events which are not predictable. So I don't know if you see the question, but it's definitely common observation from actuary and risk management. Thank you.
Thank you. I think it links to Petra's question about essentially when does it start becoming a little bit unfair and a little bit maybe too profitable if there is actually no, you can actually exclude and not cover certain areas or certain groups. So it would be interesting to hear. And also in terms of modeling going forward, right? I remember that many years ago, I was working with Aviva, and they were looking at different type of transition model building. They presented it in the Glasgow Climate Conference, etc., where they have this advanced, already nascent LLM, etc., was embedded in it, where they tried to model also transition risk. So not just climate risk, but also looking at, you know, what happens with policy transition, etc., just to understand where they might have to invest more money to explore further. So it would be interesting to hear, are you also looking at transition risk? And how are you tackling this, this tricky ethical issue with too much data which might allow you to exclude or reprice in a way that maybe is not very good for the society, but might be very good for business, to be fair?
I can probably start. I'm not a legal expert. what we do is definitely, it's I think all the companies do, mine the data, but we are not insuring individual persons. So this is not about concrete people and so on. So I think we have it a lot easier. I think doing this for concrete individual people is a lot riskier, and there are rules about that. But at the same time, if a company publicizes their yearly sustainability report on internet, I think it's fair to use it. So that's a little bit about that part. It's a totally different world if you would be insuring directly people, life and health. Anytime something like this comes, I think after year of legal expert discussion, we can start to do any work. And around the ethical concerns, and I think it's not even ethical concern. I think it's just concerns about excluding the people and excluding. I think everybody, all the insurance companies here probably do it in this company, in this room. In 70s, probably we didn't understood where are commonly the floods. We didn't have the data because nobody was tracking that, and we didn't have flood maps. So we would insure probably a house everywhere. But right now, if you know that this area is every year flooded, like ideally the state would fix it that you would not build a house there, but we know how it is. And the reality is that I think no insurer would insure a house with anything lower than the total, the premium would be the total damage that can happen. If you know that every year this damage is completely destroyed, this house is completely destroyed. So we are already doing that, and we are not doing it right now with AI. We are doing it for lots of years. And the problem is, that I perceive, is that because we will be more and more precise, it will not be problematic for all lines of business. But at some point, some lines of business will be able to be so precise that we will understand fully the risk, or there will be very small probability, and the rest will be about that we just compute some mathematical model in the background with enough data and so on. And I do not have answer, again, I'm telling. I do not have answer. The problem, I think also, is that you as insurance company can say easily, oh, we don't do this. But then you are worse than competitors, because the competitors will exclude this high risk these high risk submissions. You don't, and you get worse results and worse portfolio. So as long as the full industry does not take and manages how we do it, I think the only way forward is being more and more precise, because that is required to stay on this competitive market.
Thank you. A very good comprehensive answer. Anyone else who has any? Oh, we have a question really high up. So if you can. I'm glad I spotted that one.
It's getting higher now.
I know.
Yeah, thank you. My question.
Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, Stefan Lee from the Austrian Environmental Agency. My question goes to all three of you, and it follows up on one comment from Petra, I think, in her introductory speech, is about the insurance protection gap and whether we're actually closing it, or whether the challenge is actually just to maintain the current insurance protection gap. And so my question is to you, are these AI and tech solutions, in your assessment, in your view, are they helping to close them or maintaining?
Or expand them? I mean, it's a good question.
I can just bring a little bit facts, but then I let the other people speak, is that based on our global monitoring, the insurance gap is growing. We publish this in our research materials that we also have for our clients. And it's also because lots of new buildings are built. These buildings are built in areas that are under risk, and not everything is adequately still insured. So obviously, in the economical terms, we are growing the insurance gap globally. We are not definitely reducing, that I can tell. Question probably is if we are, at least if we would have stable portfolio and not a new development, not new factories, not new buildings and so on, if we didn't, and no new people born, if we are, at least within the stable portfolio, reducing the risk. But that I don't know.
Thank you. And on your side?
I think that it's true that the gap is there, and we have and the numbers are the numbers, no? That we have this gap in the industry. But as an industry, we have the responsibility to fill this gap and to provide the solutions for the clients, to accurate solutions for the clients to solve this solution, no? this real problem. No, I think that we have the technology in front of us to create and to work to fill this gap. No, as a parametric industry, as a parametric company, our mission is try to use all this technology that we have to provide solutions to help clients to be more resilient to the climate and to fill this gap. And I think that we have many examples, no, across the globe with projects and with problems, with clients with problems right now, that thanks to use this kind of insurance solution, they are filling this gap. I remember now a dam in Nepal with a big exposure of earthquake. Before the earthquake in Nepal, no traditional market wants to give the capacity to help these projects. No, finally we design a solution with a limit that increase across the works, increasing the limit, taking into account the PML of the work, and thanks to this solution, this project right now is progressing, no? And they receive the amount of money from the lenders. Thanks to that, the parametric helps to protect the exposure of the CatNat for this client, no? The good things is that the scientific data behind us is a big team only dedicated for parametric. So we have the time and the resources to dedicate time for a specific needs for our clients. And we can create solutions, new solutions, only for the exposure that this client have in this area or this certain company have in this specific area. So our mission is try to fill this gap. I really believe that we have the technology in front of us to offer the right solution for the clients and with the right pricing, no? Because sometimes we can create something super fancy and amazing, but if they can't pay for this solution, it's nothing, no? So this is our mission, no? Try to generate solutions with a stable price on time and to help this client to be more resilient for the climate risk.
Thank you. Matusz, do you have anything?
Sorry, I don't feel competent to respond. Yes, as a technologist, I feel there are many more experts on this in insurance gap, actually. I can share the stories, how satellites can help, but not really having statistics about whether we are closing or expanding the gap.
And are you seeing a rapid acceleration of advancement and sophistication in the technology?
Yes, so this is why we sit here, actually, to support it, to give a little bit of advice. For example, from my point of view, we are well underusing the public Europe's data, for example, from satellites, which are available to all of us. Everybody from their taxes actually supported Copernicus program, which is offering droughts, the soil moisture, lots of different things. And I believe there are very few people in Slovakia that know this actually on every level, on a governmental, on many levels. Yeah.
It's interesting, on 1st of June in Brussels, DG FISMA, DG Klima, and actually EUSPA and Copernicus are hosting a special event on insurance and satellite data for financial institutions. It's an open to attend event, so check it out, register. It's also available online for those who don't like Brussels, so you have another option. I think it's interesting to also think about, so when we talk about the technology and the hardware and things that enable this innovation, a question to you, Matusz, and then we're going to switch to something else. Are we better positioned, or are we at least positioned decently enough in comparison to US and China? Because I know that currently we're constantly doing soul searching in terms of the technological advancement in innovation in Europe?
That's a fantastic question for me.
So,
So,
should we have insurance companies providing patient capital for innovation, for example?
so if you are asking from insurance point of view, I don't know, we are very much new to this, but I did my homework and I studied the US, for example, regulatory framework. So each state has their own regulation body, actually. And this is going up to the Horizon Europe joint undertakings, where we work together with 50 companies, everybody from different fields, but we have joint undertaking to reach some goal. And I think we shall cherish that we are union, that we can speak together. The climate change will affect nations in a different ways. So, for example, south of Europe will be affected by landslides and more geophysical stuff. Northern Europe by rainfalls, and there are different triggers. So I believe that this joint talk, again, transferring the national problems, spreading governmental bodies, spreading reinsurers, spreading corporates, spreading private and public, that we shall merge together. And this is greatest benefit we have against US and China. It's always protracted in our discussion when we stay with 50 companies. If I talk to semiconductor professor, we had hard time to find a common talk, but actually we are reaching some point where we can talk together. It's very difficult. And I believe we shall do something same or similar in Europe. So I can advocate for it was the proposal for European Observatory for Insurability, which I saw in the white paper again from EIOPA. And that's the real benefit I see in our today's talks and overall in this topic.
Awesome. I think that's a very optimistic and good way that, you know, we still have hope and there are potentially ways how we can solve it with better collaboration. Do we have any other questions from the audience? Yes, please. Lee over there has a question. It is also interesting, how many of you know where the satellite data gets downloaded? So it's actually all dependent on one critical infrastructure place. It's Svalbard, and the Russians are doing some very interesting things around there. So we should be very careful. This is where security meets our economic interests and tech. Please, Lee.
So thanks very much. It's been a really interesting panel. So I'm Lee Wolf from the OECD, so I talked to you all earlier. My question is actually, so beyond the sort of the exclusion argument about how, what the impact of technology and automation might be, there's also this sort of the cost efficiency argument that automation should, you know, reduce the cost of underwriting, and parametric insurance, by being more simple, should reduce both underwriting and loss adjustment expenses. And I just wonder if you've seen that. I assume there's a lot of upfront investment in the technologies in the first place, which has to be cost somewhere. But do you actually see the sort of the reduction in the cost of providing insurance, or, you know, do you see a comparison? You know, when you compare parametric versus indemnity insurance, do you see these cost benefits from a more simplified product?
So who would
Yeah, no, definitely. In terms of loss adjuster, the cost and the reduction of the cost is absolutely total. No, so that we don't need a loss adjuster only in some specific cases, but in general we don't have this cost, so we can reduce a lot this part. In terms of the underwriter, it's true that the kind of underwriters that we have are quite different to the traditional one, that in our case is not a guy using a tool where they put some numbers and receive a quote and they have to review if he can increase or decrease the price with certain variables. So it's more specific, it's more, but at the same time, in general, I think that we can reduce the cost compared with a traditional insurer for sure, because we don't have visits to the plants, and we don't need this part of the work, because at the end of the day, we are when the people ask me about the industries or what industries is more active or this kind of things, it's true that we have some industries that are fully affected by climate, like agriculture or renewable energies, that we are working with many clients covering the lack of wind or the lack of water for hydropower stations, but we are more agnostics in terms of the industry because we are poorly covering the peril. So definitely with this vision and with this use of the technology, we can reduce a lot of the costs compared with a traditional insurance company. But the talent and the humans behind this kind of solutions are really important. It's the most precious value that we have. No, it's not only the technology, it's the people behind.
Yeah. I would go that we don't think, at least in our industry, that AI will replace us. We think AI will augment the way we work. It will be transformation, but we don't think it will replace. It will not replace the underwriters. We still keep human in the loop on everything. We also want to, because AI and all this technology has lots of problems, and when in future we think this is the right way forward. Yes, we create some operational gains, but I think that's a wrong view to look at AI just as operational gains or automation or technology. Because if you look at the operational gains, automate, let's say fully automate 10 people, that 10 people what something do. First, you will never automate what 10 people to the details that people do, but if you automate lots of work, if it's about operational gains, you need to fire them to get this, I don't know, in Slovakia, 10 people, let's say per year, it's $500,000, and you save $500,000, which is nice. But you lose knowledge, you send a bad signal, and you lose your assets, because people are assets. And people will be even bigger assets. We now face that because people are dying out, especially in Europe. This is also reality. Half of our underwriters in 10 years will go to, or in 15 years, will go in pension. So we cannot lose, and we don't want to lose. We want to help and augment. Instead, we look and we try to look also at AI and technology, that the possibilities are as growth opportunities. Let's look at the products we were not able to create and before, because we didn't have the data. It would be so administrative, ineffective that nobody would buy it. And for example, the standard situation is this flight delay. In past, the insurance, the premiums were so high for flight delays, and you needed to have a claims examiner, you needed to check for each flight specifically set up by underwriter. It was not proficient. Administrative cost was just too high compared to anything. And now, with technology, you can create something and you can monitor the flights, and the flight is delayed by 3 hours, and you can directly pay out just by 3 hours without knowing, basically it's parametric, without any claim that you know this flight was delayed and you're already paying it out. And this is a new product. So we also try to look, yes, we do lots of cost efficiency projects in Swiss Re, and we have 150 AI models in production over the last 10 years. This is not what we do in the last 2 years or last year. But at the same time, many things are other way around. We need to hire people because they're bringing money and somebody needs to operate them. And it creates new opportunities.
Thank you. Oh, we have one more question. Perfect. The gentleman over there.
Daniel Hardy, Vienna Institute for International Economic Studies. I've been very fascinating. I quite understand why people want to cede risks to you, but I'd like to hear a bit more about who's providing the financing and the capital for these businesses. I mean, to put it more concretely, traditional insurance business was relatively simple in the sense that they were saying they're big pools, fairly stable risks. We think of cat bonds, issued by Port of New York, kind of idea of how likely is New York to flood. Here you have much more bespoke, granular products. And how do your investors judge whether you're managing this well and providing either reinsurance or capital or something else to you on the financing side?
Yeah, I think that in terms of investors and financial investors that we have, I think that the capacity available on the market for parametrics is growing a lot year by year. No, we have more capacity right now that when we start in 2009 with a really small capacity for parametric, but the market is deploying a big capacity right now for all the big players for sure. The partner behind the card is generally insurance, and we have right now until 200 million for certain risks. That is probably the largest, one of the largest capacity on the market for this kind of solution. And at the same time, the sidecars, the ELW solutions, etc., are right now full of capacity for investors because they see the advantage of these solutions, not covering this kind of GatNat perils worldwide. No, in US, it's really common. No, right now, this kind of investors in these solutions for the simplicity, for the kind of risk that we are covering, that we are more focused on big events more than the severity, so it's easier to control and to monitoring what is the exposure that you have and what is the risk that you are assuming, no, for certain areas of the world. But at this moment, it's true that the capacity is not a problem. It's true that we have certain clients that consume a really big capacity worldwide, and many of the, especially when we are talking about countries that right now are buying parametrics, no, that you can imagine the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the government of Morocco, for example, that they had a big parametric policy for earthquake, and other countries that right now are buying parametric consume big capacity, but it's not a problem at all because we have the capacity and we have more and more investors that you mentioned right now with focus on this solution. So it's a good news because we have capacity to help the clients to fill the gaps that we are talking during this conference. No, that is in the past was a problem. And the capacity was limited. I remember with many of the clients with Caribbean exposure that renewed the policies around this month, around April, and we talk with all of them and say, if you want the capacity, you have to act really fast, because the capacity consumed in June, you don't have more capacity to deploy for the clients. Right now, this is not never happen again. No, we have the capacity to support clients during the whole the year, no, for the different periods. So it's absolutely agree with you and with the capacity that is deployed for the parametric solution, but it's a good news for the market and for the client.
Thank you. So we are running out of time, so I would like to do one last quick round. So since we're finishing up, etc., so we know that there is the protection gap, and how do we close it? That's a good question, whether it's on you in your roles, which I highly doubt. It looks like it should be a lot more government and other parts of the system acting maybe a little bit more proactively. But what is on your wish list, essentially, for the next 2 to 5 years? What would make your life much, much easier professionally, or make your business better? So it would be nice to hear what would be on your top 2 wish list. So if we can start with you, Mateusz.
Yes, so from this place, if I can encourage to maintain this discussion between government, regulators, reinsurers, corporates, privates, don't be afraid to reach out to us. We have solutions probably unimaginable to you. What we can do with satellite data, for example, how we can improve your models, but we never had this discussion actually. So I'm very thankful to National Bank of Slovakia. We started a joint dialogue. I am happy that there are open-minded people who invited us here, who are trying to be supportive. So very much thank you. And yeah, don't be afraid to speak with private companies. I think Michal from Swiss Re said something the same, like, let's do it together. Thank you.
Thank you. Juan Maria?
Now, really, thank you for the opportunity to stay here. I think that we have the gap and the problem of the protection gap there, but I really believe that we have the resources and we have the technology to support the clients to be more resilient to the climate change right now. And the support for the institutions now to develop more technology and more resources to help us to have better and more accurate data for the future.
Thank you. Lukáš?
Thanks as well, and also the co-panelist. It's not my wish list, it's more like ask. As you know, Swiss Re's motto, probably not everybody knows, but make the world more resilient. So we never said in the make the world more resilient that it needs to be done by Swiss Re and just by us. So I would like to ask you that you help us to make the world more resilient to achieve our goal.
Yeah, thank you. And let's look forward to see what happens next, because we do have a big adaptation wave from DG Klima, which is working with EIB for the first time ever, actually looking at financial instruments that are aligned to help our critical infrastructure. So I guess maybe the future is not that bleak after all. But thank you very much, everyone. Thank you, NBS, and over to you, Roman.
Thank you very much. We are closing to the end of our conference day, and I would like to invite Julia Čelíková to wrap up the day and close the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman, for giving me the floor. I try to make the notes how to summarize and wrap up this day. But let me firstly to share with you my personal feeling. Who knows me, know that the insurance, the climate, innovation, data is close to my heart, and I discussed a lot about the challenges to give the stakeholder in one table, in one place, and start to speak. And we speak about the dreams, and it's very funny that somebody have dreams to give to people together, but I think that we today fulfill one of our wishes and the dreams that, continue with the story. It's was created a little bit randomly, because that in one hand, thanks to Petra, that he announced that she is planned to visit us, thanks to the Roman Vasil and Braňo and his teams, that, okay, we are planning to do some green workshop. Whoop, how to do it? I had a lot of discussion with OECD, with Pablo, in my former position of the chair of in the working party. Okay, it's days coming, and thanks to all of you and all panelists that you was able to accept our invitation and change your calendar, because you prolonged the day, you changed the calendar. And thanks to all panelists, and mainly thanks to all of you, because I am so proud that we have a full house, that we bring everybody together. Try to a little bit, because it's called the summary. If I'm listening whole day, I think that set up the panel look like the good puzzle. That firstly, in the first panel, that Petra gave us very wide opinion of the IOPA, which is strengthening the position where we are. But Pablo was sharing the global or international view for the topic. We give together the OECD, IOPA, IAS, and we recognize that we are already on the finding of solution. We are able to work together, and we follow with the second panel with the region view. And my lesson learned, it's important, is cooperation, supervision, government, researcher, use the data, financial education, don't forget for this. And all of us should to take some responsibility for the solving this challenge, because I don't want to call the problem. Last panels fluently continue the data. We discussed about the ethics. You know, that's a lot of you knows that I was studying like the statistic and the theory of probability. That also data is close to my heart. That we had a discussion if it is data can be misused and how ethical is it. But my personal opinion that society is very often unethical without the data. And I think that it's much better to use the data and try to be ethical. That's use the data and try to be ethical. I don't think that way that we will stop to collect and analyze the data, that is, we have immediately results that everybody will be ethics. That's. I will use some hope from the last panel, and I find the bridge. You can see a lot of us have these yellow nurses today. I think that you can find some parallel. Hope, solution, cooperation, and support. And this is something what I would like to take from today's meeting. And the whole day, especially for me, to bring a lot of new ideas, like to set up the one place for from the local point of view when we can share the outcomes, when we can share the studies, and I try to I can promise, I'm not sure that I will be able to fulfill immediately, but we try to give all presentation from today in one place, and we will also to ask our panelist participants to collect the data and research in one place, because I think that is a good start, not to replicate, but take the lesson learned. That's, and what the final, it was the first conference, but definitely I believe that not last, but I need some kind of your feedback that if you think that is important for us, if you want to continue, and if you can see the useful, but definitely for us, I think that give people together and to accept each other and to learn from each other is the start of the finding solution. And last but not least, I thanks to panelists, Petra, Pablo, and Lee from the OECD, also the AES, also to everybody. But I cannot forget for all of my colleagues which helped me to organize this event, because the idea was created, I think, in the beginning of January, and it is finally done. I didn't see I cannot mention to everybody, but I would like to mention Matusz Medved. I didn't see. Okay, thank you very much. I also would like to thank the team of Branio Relovsky, especially Roman Vasil, which take over the position of this important man. And I think that I can congratulate that you was doing the good job. And also all of the techniques and everybody. I cannot start to mention to everybody, but without you, we cannot have a successful event. And most lesson learned, share the opinion, hope, and cooperate. That's, I don't want to prolong it. I will save the time for some additional informal discussion, because I think that is also the huge advantage of these personal meetings. I will conclude this event, but you still have a coffee and some water and refreshment outside, and you can a little bit continue with a small chat. And again, thank you to everybody. I believe that you like this event.